Hey folks, what if death isn't the end? Today we explore a future where your mind lives on digitally. Welcome to this deep dive where we sift through research to understand the big questions shaping our future. This time we're venturing into the compelling and perhaps a little unsettling realm of digital immortality, often called mind uploading. The material we've been looking at paints a picture of a future where our consciousness might just find a new home beyond our biological selves.
That's right. And the sources we've explored, they lay out both the exciting possibilities and, frankly, the considerable hurdles of this idea.
Hmm.
We see how advancements in artificial intelligence and uh, our understanding of the brain are suggesting potential pathways towards extending life, maybe even transferring aspects of ourselves digitally.
But it also opens up these huge questions, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Profound questions about what it means to be us, what constitutes our identity, our consciousness, if it were to exist in a digital form. It's a fascinating intersection, cutting edge tech and really old philosophical questions.
Okay, let's maybe start with the here and now. How is AI already playing a role in, well, extending how long we live? It's not quite moving minds into computers yet, but maybe a first step, pushing the boundaries of lifespan.
Exactly. AI is already making significant strides in understanding and potentially lengthening our biological lives. Our sources point to its increasing use in predictive healthcare, especially for older adults. By analyzing these massive amounts of biological data, things like genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, all that complex
Oh,
stuff.
right, the omics.
Yeah, AI can identify patterns linked to aging and predict the likelihood of age-related diseases. There's a key example highlighted about identifying genes like AKT1, which seems to play a role in aging. This kind of analysis gives us valuable insights.
So AI is basically acting like a super smart data analyst, helping us kind of decode the biology of getting older.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. And this ability, it extends to creating more personalized treatments and maybe even speeding up the discovery of new drugs specifically for age-related illnesses.
Imagine that. Therapies tailored just for you, based on your biology, to fight aging.
That's the potential future being explored. Of course, the sources also stress, the ethical side. Responsible development is key when you're mixing AI and our very personal biological information.
Absolutely. Can't forget that. Okay, now let's take that leap. The more futuristic idea of mind uploading. When we talk about this, what exactly are we envisioning?
Well, at its core, mind uploading is the concept of transferring the essential elements of our mind, so memories, personality, that sense of self, onto a non-biological platform, basically a computer system.
Science fiction loves this idea.
Oh, completely. It's given some really compelling visions, sometimes unsettling ones, too. Think about The Matrix, minds in a simulation, or Ghost in the Shell, consciousness in artificial bodies. Even shows like Black Mirror, San Junipero, for example, or the movie Chappie. They all explore variations on this theme.
It's definitely captured the imagination.
Yeah,
And the sources mention some pretty optimistic predictions from futurists.
they do. Prominent figures like Raymond Kurzweil have suggested this could become technologically feasible, maybe by 2045.
Wow, that's not that far away.
Relatively speaking, no. Others, like Peter Singh, think it's more likely in the latter half of this century. Their confidence seems to stem largely from watching the exponential progress in computing power. Moore's Law.
Right, the idea that processing power doubles regularly.
Exactly. And also rapid advancements in related fields like genetic sequencing, even 3D printing. It all contributes to this belief that these huge technical challenges might eventually be overcome.
It sounds like a strong faith in technology's power to solve it, but let's get real. What are the major technical hurdles? What actually stands in the way?
Well, the human brain, as far as we understand it, it's just extraordinarily complex. It's not just a bag of cells. It's this incredibly intricate network of connections, these tiny gaps called synapses, this constant flow of electrochemical signals.
Mind-boggling.
It really is.
Yeah.
Accurately mapping and then replicating that level of complexity in a machine, it's a truly monumental undertaking. New imaging tech, like stuff being developed at Stanford, is giving us these incredibly detailed views of neural connections. And honestly, that just highlights how much information we need to capture.
So it's like trying to make a perfect digital copy of something, but the blueprint itself is almost too intricate to read fully.
Precisely. And this leads us to the idea of whole brain emulation, or WBE. The goal there is to create a digital model that functions exactly like a complete human brain, neuron by neuron.
A complete simulation.
Yeah. And researchers have even outlined different stages or levels of success for WBE. It ranges from just listing all the brain's parts to getting a complete scan to a functional emulation. all the way up to simulating an individual's mind, identity, fitting into social roles. That's the ultimate hardest goal.
Which seems incredibly difficult, especially given we don't fully grasp consciousness itself.
Exactly. So the initial focus would likely be on those earlier stages getting a comprehensive scan, maybe achieving a basic functional emulation, before we even get to the really deep philosophical questions about what that digital thing is.
Okay, step by step. So what kind of tech would we need just for those initial steps? Scanning, for instance.
Right. The roadmap for WBE points to several critical technical needs. First, you need incredibly precise scanning to map the brain down to individual connections, even tiny structures like synaptic vesicles. You need nanoscale imaging.
Nanoscale. Tiny.
Very tiny. Various methods are being looked at, TEM, SEM, and newer ones like SBSM, FibSem. But each has limitations: resolution, reliability, and just the sheer time it takes. There's one estimate that suggests scanning just 10 cubic millimeters of brain tissue. Tiny bit, could take around 2,000 years with one method.
2,000 years for a piece that small. Okay, that definitely puts those 2045 predictions in perspective.
It certainly does. And there's even this idea of creating a brain physical library, like a central repository for detailed scanning and massive data storage.
Assuming we somehow get the scan data, what's next? Processing it.
That's the next huge hurdle: image processing and scan interpretation.
Hmm.
The raw data would be astronomical. You'd need incredibly sophisticated software to correct distortions, clean up noise, fill in gaps, trace every cell and connection,
Hmm.
identify cell types, estimate all the parameters needed for a simulation. It's like rebuilding an impossibly complex machine from trillions of microscopic photos.
A computational nightmare, basically. And then you have to make this digital brain actually do something, right? Simulate thinking.
That's where neural simulation comes in. We've been trying to model brain function for decades, from Hodgkin and Huxley's early work to today's large neural nets. But a key question is, how much detail do you need? Is it just about when neurons fire? Or do you need the whole physical shape, the precise timing of signals? There's this thing called STDP, spike timing dependent plasticity, which operates at millisecond or sub-millisecond levels and seems vital for learning. Do you need dendritic computing, the processing within neuron branches? The internal chemistry, neuromodulators, proteins? Some detailed models might need simulation at, get this, 10 to the power of 15 different compartments within each neuron.
My brain hurts just thinking about that number. What kind of computer could even run that?
That's the computer hardware challenge. You'd need truly immense capabilities. We're talking unbelievable computing power, FLOPS, floating point operations per second, plus enormous memory and data storage.
Right.
Supercomputer performance is growing fast, sure, but there might be physical limits: energy, cooling, just space.
So we might need entirely new types of computers.
Possibly. Researchers are looking into alternative technologies, things like Y-branch switches, RSFQ logic, quantum dot cellular automata, molecular electronics, really exotic stuff.
Wow. So achieving this isn't just about cracking the brain code. It might require a whole new era of computing, too. The technical hurdles are, well, they seem almost insurmountable right now. But let's imagine we do overcome them. We still face that fundamental question. If we create a digital copy of a mind, is it still us?
That is the central question, and the sources we looked at really dig into the philosophical and ethical considerations, especially around personal identity. Can our sense of self truly be preserved through uploading? It's a super complex philosophical problem debated for centuries. The sources highlight different ways to think about it, but don't claim to have the final answer. Nobody does, really.
Right. So what are some of the main philosophical takes on what makes us who we are?
Well, one view is the biological approach. It basically argues our identity is tied firmly to our physical body, maybe even specifically the brainstem as the core control center. Eric Olson is a key thinker here.
So if the body goes, identity goes.
That's the implication. Then there's the psychological approach. This links identity more to our mental stuff: memories, personality, behaviors.
That feels more intuitive to some, maybe.
Perhaps. But it faces tricky problems, like the thought experiment. What if you put each half of your brain in a different body? Which one is you? Or both, or neither. Olson critiques this view too. And then there's the narrative approach. This suggests identity is about the coherent story we tell about our lives. Mari Sheckman is associated with this.
Like, my identity is my life story.
Kind of, yeah. Though others, like Strawson, argue against that, saying we don't necessarily need or have a single continuous narrative self. We might experience ourselves more episodically.
Okay, so it's this tension between body, mind contents, and story. How does mind uploading mess with these ideas?
Well, the sources use thought experiments to poke at these views. The classic teleportation analogy is one. If you're disassembled here and reassembled perfectly over there, did you travel? Or did you die and a copy was made? What if the original wasn't destroyed? Then you'd have two.
Right, the copy problem. A perfect copy would also think it's me.
Exactly. Then there's gradual replacement. Imagine swapping out your neurons one by one with synthetic ones. Is there a point where the original you dies and a new synthetic you is born? Or is it continuous? People generally want a single continuous consciousness.
Yeah, you don't want to feel like you ceased to exist.
Precisely. And that relates to destructive versus non-destructive uploading. If the original brain is destroyed after the upload, destructive, some argue that helps preserve the idea of one continuous identity, transferring it. But non-destructive uploading, where the original remains, creates that fission problem, multiple copies, which means philosophically, maybe neither copy is numerically identical to the original you.
It seems like whichever path you take technologically, you hit these deep, maybe unanswerable questions about selfhood.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond these thought experiments, too. What makes a human unique, really? How much does our physical experience, our perception, shape us in ways that just can't be digitized? Even things like how our brain hemispheres develop differently, revealed by split brain studies, show how complex and embodied our identity is.
These are definitely deep waters. Okay, stepping back a bit, what about the more practical societal implications if this ever became real?
On a practical level, yeah, the idea of a digital self raises huge concerns. Data storage, security, who controls this digital you? The potential for misuse seems enormous. And then there's the basic question. What counts as death if a digital you persists after your body fails?
Does our definition of death need an update?
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Some draw parallels to organ transplants. Replacing a heart doesn't mean the person died. Could the brain or mind be seen similarly? Also, the sources question how much information you would even need to make a convincing prediction or copy of someone. Is your social media feed enough? Probably not for a deep reverse engineering.
Seems unlikely.
And finally, there's this tension. On one hand, the sort of metaphysical possibilities of branching identities, digital copies. On the other hand, the need to keep our current society functional. How do you handle identity, responsibility, population growth, fraud, if copies are possible? It could be chaos.
It sounds like even if the tech hurdles were cleared, the philosophical and societal ones might be even bigger blockers. A real tangled web.
It really is. This deep dive shows this fascinating, complex interplay between the incredible tech being dreamed up and these profound philosophical challenges to what it means to be human. The path towards digital immortality, if it even exists, is definitely filled with both promise and significant peril.
The body may fade, but the data might remain, and with it, a version of you. In our next episode, we go even deeper. Until then, stay curious.